Poggers! It's me, Mario and the gang, you probably know my name. And so we start the game, jumping high, ducking low, from the sky to the ocean. How come Peach can't stop being stolen? Need the fire flower star power now for Bowser. Koopa Troopa Super Goomba soon to lose a life. It's me and Peach and Luigi, so you know, stop and don't rock and roll. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
You know what I love? Video games. And where can I play video games? Well, at my house on a giant TV screen or handheld screen. Duh. But let's be real, you're not a real gamer if you haven't gotten your hands on several game cabinets at arcades. They might have died out a bit, but who doesn't love these kind of places where you can run around, be hyper, and do whatever you want? And what would make arcades even better? Well, having food courts, of course, which already turned up soon enough. For me, it was usually rare to come across any arcade that served food as well. I mean, all I had was McDonald's with their play places, and while they were fun, it really wasn't enough for me. Thankfully, I'm able to travel to other places that are all three of the things I want, which are eating food, playing games, and just going on rides along with crawling around tubes and such. And arcades are all over the world for people to enjoy, which is great. But what did we in America have that most other countries didn't? Well, we've had a handful of places like Coney Island, and there's even this place called I Play America, but to me, only one family fun center stood out to me as a place that truly defines fun for the whole family. And that's Charles Entertainment Cheese, or better known as Chuck E. Cheese's. That's right, the world's most famous mouse. You heard me. Eat your heart out, Mickey. Being around since 1977, Chuck E. Cheese began as a groundbreaking and innovative concept, which was of course bringing pizza, games, and entertainment all under one roof. Created by a man that goes by the name Nolan Bushnell, who was also the founder of Atari, which makes a lot of sense. And while the company has gone through many hit and miss arrangements over the years, and almost went out of business at the start of the 2020s, kids are still having the time of their lives being kids at this place. Hell, in the 70s and 80s, the place was going through a huge identity crisis by figuring out what name they should go for. Like Coyote Pizza, Chuck E. Cheese Pizza Time Theater, Showbiz Pizza, but only one full name rolled right off the tongue perfectly, which is where we're at now. The place always had the perfect welcoming atmosphere going on for it. You were first introduced to the glorious arcade room filled with the games, rides, sky tubes, pizza, infamous animatronic band, and the walk-around mascot characters. Which of course inspired a certain indie game franchise that got most of its ideas from Chucky. But if you're that weird person, you probably associate this place most with FNAF, getting its inspiration from CEC. And a lot of people are still asking for an official crossover between these two franchises, which has just as much possibility of happening as GTA 6 being a thing and us getting gameplay for Metroid Prime 4. Oh wait, those already happened. So who knows, maybe it could happen, but not for a long time. One thing I really loved about CEC was in the 90s and 2000s when you walked into the store, the cast members would treat you as special guests, trying to give a grand and magical experience with general fun. Sadly, they don't do much of that these days, especially in the new 2.0 stores, but I know for a fact that kids still get super excited when they're brought to this place. You still got the arcade, pizza, and walk-around characters, but something just feels off and nowhere near the same as it used to be. In fact, it's extremely rare to find a Chucky performer that's actually active. And just like most other franchises cater to children, CEC has a huge fandom that I of course happen to be a part of. Someone even made this unofficial fan convention called ChuckyCon, where they hold events that include things such as collector displays, character visits, and performances. Honestly, I hope I can attend this someday because it looks super fun. Something I really appreciate these days is that you can think of any piece of media that exists, and chances are it has a fandom that's filled with dedicated people. Despite there being toxicity in these fandoms from time to time. Mario, Sonic, MLP, Star Wars, Thomas and Friends, you name it. It just further proves that you're never too old to enjoy something, and people who tell you otherwise were clearly never loved as children. But there are times where I wish I was born in the 90s. It's unfortunate how I wasn't alive when they had the ball pits, but I was when they had the sky tubes. They smelled like Dookie anyway. That's another thing I noticed. Once the 90s went away, that's when ball pits in several family centers started going away too. I never understood that, but thankfully there are some places where you can play in ball pits, but sadly they're in some pretty far places. Anyway, back to CEC. Fairly recently the sky tubes left for better or worse. probably better since there was that stupid 5 kids gone missing lie back in 2022. And replacing them was trampolines, which is pretty cool. I do sort of miss the aesthetic that the restaurants used to have from the 80s and 90s though. And just recently they removed the incredible animatronic band known as Munch's Make Believe Band. And people always said that the pizza was terrible and that they reuse it or whatever, but it really wasn't that bad, even though it was clearly cheap at times. I'll never forget that hilarious pizza conspiracy that went on a while back, though. And at least the pizza is better than those tiny pizzas you'd see in those little restaurants across the street. Pizza wasn't all they had, though. They served chicken wings, sandwiches, cheesy bread, french fries, Dippin' Dots, and salad. Ugh. They actually tried selling their food at certain retail stores, but surprise, surprise, they weren't selling well. You think that was crazy? There was even an ad where it shows how you can bring your report card to the place and you'd get 50 free tokens from it. Which sounds really weird by today's standards, but it didn't matter because my grades were always whack anyway, yet my parents still took me to this place. I wouldn't even care if you had to be a kid to enter this place. It had so many cool games that were fun as hell. I mean, in the old commercials, they were literally showing adults playing the games and eating the pizza, so they clearly don't care. I'd even still dance with Chucky. There was this one game called the Sonic Spinner that was themed after Sonic Adventure, which is where I won the most tickets at because, well, it was a Sonic game. There was also a SpongeBob themed version of the spinner, but instead of the jackpot being 75 tickets, it was 250 tickets. And they had a Super Monkey Ball machine that my mom really loved playing every time we went there. Also, I've only been in the Ticket Blaster one time, and never again, which is kinda lame, but at least I got to experience it, so I can't be too mad. And back in the 2000s, if you couldn't convince your parents to give you a ride to the place but could convince them to let you play on the computer, you can play some quick flash games on the CEC website. For some reason, I thought I was the only one who knew about these and played the shit out of them, but turns out, I'm not. Looking back, the games did kind of feel cheap, and were clearly targeting the demographic of children, which makes sense because of what the brand itself was known for. Some games even felt like complete rip-offs of already existing games, but of course my childlike self was too young to realize, as the only thing on my mind was to just have fun in life. They even had an online version of Skee-Ball you could play, and you'd be able to win a certificate of up to 40 tickets you'd earn when you took it to the store. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The company just has this really creative flow behind it. Speaking of tickets, instead of the games giving them to you physically, they now do e-tickets that just scan themselves right into the card when you play a game. Same shit they did with replacing tokens for those Play Pass cards. Of course, just like every other arcade in the multiverse, you could redeem the tickets for some whack-ass prizes, and the few good prizes would cost over thousands of tickets or would require you to pay with real money. And remember the kid check stamps they would put on your arms when you entered the buildings? Yeah, well now they just take your picture with your own phone instead. These were some weird-ass changes. The biggest change-up that every fan is aware of was the random design switch-up for the mascot in 2012. Yeah, there's been a ton of controversy ever since they changed the design and voice of Chuck around that time. Some people liked it, and of course some people hated it. At the time, I was kind of mixed between the decision of changing him. It made sense as to why they had to redesign him due to sales flopping around 2012 and his old look being more or less outdated for the new generation. And part of me feels the change was for the best due to most people being petrified by the poor mouse. Although I don't think that did much, seeing as how kids are still terrified of him to this very day. Better than how he looked in the 70s and 80s. Yikes. I enjoy both designs, but much like other folks, part of me always preferred his design from the late 90s and 2000s. Or, as some call, cool/Avenger Chucky. Don't know where those came from, but it sounds awesome, and that's all that matters. The old design definitely made him feel cool, and it would make him feel like someone you'd want to hang out with. I mean, he literally wore a backwards cap. If that doesn't define cool to you, I don't know what will. And the commercials during this era? Mwah! Plus, his voice during that time really fitted the character and actually made him sound like how a mouse would sound like. No offense to Jarrett Reddick, of course. Fun fact, Jarrett, along with being the current voice for the mouse, also was the singer of both the Sonic Unleashed main vocal theme Endless Possibilities and the Phineas and Ferb intro. I will say that I think the random jump between the Avenger and Rockstar designs was pretty abrupt, since I'm pretty sure they didn't let anybody outside of the company know about it. At least until the 2012 commercial Say Cheese is Funner, which was the first ad to feature the Rockstar design. In fact, from what I know, they didn't even let Duncan Brannon know about the random change in voice and design for the mouse either.
Duncan was the voice actor for Avenger Chuck from the 90s to 2012 until Jarrett came around. And all you PBS Kids fans or people that grew up watching the network in the 90s and 2000s, remember when we'd see those CEC sponsorship bumpers in between each show? Well, I certainly do. I guess you guys have PBS Kids to thank for my Chuck E. Cheese addiction, because I would see those ads anytime and anywhere. Yup, CEC has done loads of collaborations, including one with MLP, which of course I had to bring up. Even one with Sonic the Hedgehog, but with what game? Sonic Forces. No matter, still enjoy this dynamic duo. Oh yeah, and can we talk about the entire colorful cast of characters that were made for this arcade pizzeria, cause not everyone knows about them, even though I feel like they should. If you've never seen these guys before, then just think of them as the McDonald's gang, but with 10 times more personality and charm. I mean, yeah, they were literally just used as animatronics, but people just shrug them off as FNAF wannabes, and I really hate when that happens. And they made full-on mascot costumes of them too, but we mostly only see Charles because they're that lazy. Not just that, but the songs were actually catchy, and the dance moves are extremely fun to reenact. And while most of the songs end up being already existing pop culture ones, the original songs go way harder than they need to go. Even some of the newer songs are such bops. I can't play them here, but you gotta have a listen to Helen's Gaming Time, Out of This World, Song of Summer, and Gotta Be Halloween. You won't regret it, trust me. That's another thing I loved about this place. It was filled to the brim with character, personality, and was overall very inventive. It wasn't just your typical pizza restaurant with arcade games. It's a place with magic, and you don't even have to be a kid to understand the fun that can be had. Whereas compared to another restaurant arcade like Dave & Buster's that's cool and all, but just doesn't really feature the same nature CEC has. Chucky is basically an anthropomorphic mouse who loves to sing, dance, play games, and eat pizza. Just like me. Apparently a lot of people think that he is a rat, which, yeah, I can kinda see, but I'm pretty sure the company made it obvious that he's a mouse. His backstory is actually quite depressing when reading it. Believe it or not, he was an orphan and doesn't know when his own birthday is, so he never had a birthday party of his own to celebrate, which is pretty sad. But since he was at an orphanage, there were birthday parties held there every week, so he got to celebrate with all the other kids. Then one day, Chucky won a Pong tournament, yes, that Pong, and won a trophy along with $50, which he then used to buy a bus ticket to New York City, and once he got there, he had no place to stay. And then he came across a pizzeria that was ran by an Italian chef named Pasquale, who also loves to sing. Chucky would sleep above the kitchen, and all of a sudden he decided to explore the restaurant until Pasquale discovered him and chased his ass with a rolling pin until he cornered him. While he was cornered, he decided to do the one thing that always made him happy, which was singing. Pasquale was so shocked that he dropped the rolling pin. "A mouse that can sing? My restaurant is saved! I'm gonna make you a star!" Pasquale immediately changed the name of his restaurant to Chuck E. Cheese's, home of the world-famous singing mouse. Then the next day, a crowd of people came to the restaurant to hear Chuck sing, but unfortunately, panic kicked in, and he got stage fright, leaving the crowd to boo at him, and then the folks left. While Chucky was staring out the window, he saw a kid with a birthday crown on walking with his family. Can you guess what the mouse did? If you guessed sing happy birthday, then you're not a full-on genius, because I'm sure anyone would have figured that out. Then more folks joined in and couldn't believe their eyes when they saw him sing. And from that point on, Chuck E. Cheese's would go on to be a place for kids and only for kids to have fun and celebrate birthdays. Chuck also convinced Pasquale to bring in his other favorite thing, which was games. And he hasn't stopped singing or smiling since. Wow. I don't know who the heck was responsible for giving a character like this such depressing lore, but massive props to them. But yeah, Chuck E. Cheese was a lonely child. Who knew? And there are millions of other characters I can talk about, but I don't have the time, energy, money, or patience for that, and I'm sure you guys don't either, so let's just move on. For now, I'll go over the more important ones, starting off with Helen Henny. She's a kind-hearted hen that's also another one of the lead singers in the band. In her modern character description, she's described as a gamer, but in her old one, she has or had a crush on Chucky. Predictable. Which, as you guessed, leads to some fan art and fan fiction of the two, which I highly recommend not checking out. Next is Jasper T. Jowls, who has been around since the very beginning. This canine fellow is Chuck's best pal, and is the lead guitarist who's friendly, jokes around, and often intelligent about things. And then there's Mr. Munch. Now at first glance, one could easily mix him up with Grimace, and it's obviously not difficult to understand why.
He's a bit of a dummy who's more or less just for comedic relief, even more so than Jasper. He's also obsessed with eating everything he sees at first sight, in case the name wasn't a straight giveaway for any of you.
Seriously, he gives Yoshi and Kirby a run for their money. There's also Bella Bunny, who likes to speak Spanish, but I don't really care for her as much as I do for the others. I just wish more people knew about the other characters and not just the big cheese himself. While we're on the topic of things that people might not know about, they actually made a full-on direct-to-video film based on the franchise called Chuck E. Cheese in the Galaxy 5000. Released in 1999, it was sold exclusively at the restaurants for not very long and eventually became a Toys R Us item, and when I found out about this years back, I had the most stupidest shock on my face and was enticed to learn more about it. In fact, when I found out that it existed from that point on, I was enticed to learn everything I could about the brand and the franchise itself. And get this, it was distributed by Funimation, the same people that brought you the Dragon Ball Z dub. Although, when coming from a reviewing perspective, it ain't that good, if not at all, as one would assume. The plot is about a boy named Charlie Rocket who needs $50,000 to fix his aunt and uncle's tractor engine, so Chucky and his friends go to the Galaxy 5000 to win a race to get it. Which is just the same old random person no one gives a shit about hangs out with anthropomorphic animals trope. And it didn't really have anything to do with the actual play place itself. But I will give credit where it's due since it was their first attempt at making something you can actually watch on your own personal TV. I'm actually surprised that the movie was archived and didn't become lost media or something. It's really strange how we've never had any official cartoon or just any sort of TV show featuring all these characters, because the possibilities were and still are endless, I'd say. I mean, we do get the puppet shows and such, but of course they only air at the stores themselves on the screens and on the company's YouTube channel. And hey, at least we had those Chuck E. Cheese games for Nintendo Wii and DS that are totally not just cheap Mario Party knockoffs. The company was definitely a lot more experimental with the franchise past the 2000s, way more than they were in the 90s. But apparently there's talk of a CEC game show in the works that's for adults? I don't know about you guys, but that kind of thing for a brand that goes by the slogan where a kid can be a kid doesn't sound too smart. I'm guessing it's for the nostalgic fans, like me. Overall, Chuck E. Cheese's is definitely a whole lot different today than how it was in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and even 2010s, but no matter what, this pizza/arcade venue will always hold a very special place in my heart. It's still a much better place to celebrate a birthday than a certain other theme park attraction area that also has a mouse for a mascot. The brand is so dedicated to birthdays that they threw a party for a boy who didn't have anybody on his birthday to celebrate with. And while it's understandable why people would be upset for how different the company feels today, some of their decisions actually do work from what I've seen. Just recently, they signed a deal with the California Dreamin' Water Park to open up a new CEC Splash Zone attraction. It's a unique concept that actually works and is a huge amount of dedication that I can admire. That's what most businesses have to go through after all. When you have a long-running establishment, you gotta do what you can to keep it active. Nonetheless, the restaurant itself is where the real deal is, as we know. 5 of my own personal birthday parties were actually held over there. That's how much I love this wacky place. Say what you will, but you can't deny how incredible it is that the brand was able to last this long and is still growing strong today. The environment this place offers is just unique all around, and I know for a fact that I'm not the only one who's had this place play a part in their childhood. I mean, the brand is so vastly known that people even made a ripoff of it in Mexico, and hopefully got sued. If you've ever been to CEC, feel free to share your fond memories of experiencing this place, whether it being in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, or even 2010s. I'm just praying to the gods that the restaurant chain or franchise itself never come to an end, even though it almost did in 2020. But if a Chuck E. Cheese and FNAF crossover actually does happen one day, I'm sure that would make both brands tons of money. Sheesh, talking about all this just made me remember how much I told my parents that I would love to work as an employee over there. Maybe if doing YouTube doesn't work out, working there is not out of the question and isn't such a bad idea.
Chuck E. Cheese's. Oh, Chuck, it's cool. For real.